The air in the Mosswood Pack's clearing was always thick with the smell of pine needles, damp earth, and the powerful musky scent of werewolves who prided themselves on their strength. It was under the heavy, green canopy of these ancient trees that a young woman named Sage felt smaller than ever before. Sage was different from the others, a fact that was whispered about her from the time she was a pup. While the other young wolves practiced their fighting moves, their growls echoing through the forest, Sage was quietly tending to a small hidden garden of medicinal herbs. Her fingers, which were clumsy with a training sword, were incredibly clever and gentle with plants. She could identify a yarrow root from a dozen paces away, knew which moss best stopped bleeding, and could brew a tea that soothed the deepest cough. This was her magic, her gift, but in a pack that valued the sharpness of claws and the strength of jaws, her healing hands were seen as a strange curiosity, a softness that bordered on uselessness. On this particular day the sun was dappling through the leaves, painting shifting patterns on the forest floor. Sage's heart was beating a frantic, hopeful rhythm against her ribs, a wild bird trapped in a cage of her own nervousness. She had made a decision, a brave one, perhaps the bravest of her life. She was going to tell Brock how she felt. Brock was everything the pack admired. He was tall, with broad shoulders and a confident swagger that made other warriors step aside. His laugh was loud and booming, and when he fought in training matches, a crowd always gathered to watch his raw power. Sage, like many others, had watched him from afar for months, her quiet affection growing with each passing day into a stubborn, hopeful crush. She had convinced herself that maybe, just maybe, he would see the value in a gentle heart. Maybe he was tired of only fierce warriors and would appreciate the comfort of a peaceful home. She found him by the training grounds, wiping sweat from his brow after a sparring match. He was surrounded by a few of his friends, all of them laughing about a particularly hard tackle one of them had delivered. Sage took a deep, shaky breath, her fingers clutching the small hand-stitched pouch of calming lavender she had made for him. "Brock," she said, her voice coming out softer than she intended. Can I talk to you for a moment?" He turned, a smirk playing on his lips as he looked her up and down, taking in her simple dress and the faint smell of herbs that always clung to her. "Sure, little healer," he said, his tone slightly mocking. "What is it? Did you get a paper cut and need one of your special bandages?" His friends chuckled behind him. The laughter stung, but Sage pressed on, her courage fraying at the edges. I made this for you," she said, holding out the pouch. "I just wanted to say, I think you're very brave. And I like you. A lot." For a moment there was silence. Then Brock threw his head back and laughed, a harsh, cruel sound that held no warmth. He took the pouch from her fingers, not gently, and sniffed it before letting it drop to the muddy ground. "You like me?" he said, his voice dripping with disbelief. "Sage, be serious. Look at you. You're weak. You can't even throw a proper punch. You spend your days talking to flowers. What could you possibly offer someone like me? A true mate is strong. A true mate can fight by your side, protect the pack. You'd just be someone else I'd have to protect. A liability." He leaned closer, his voice dropping but losing none of its meanness. "Don't embarrass yourself. Go find some other weakling to pick daisies with. You'll never be important to anyone who matters." The words hit Sage like physical blows, each one landing on a secret fear she had carried for years. She felt the heat of shame flood her cheeks, and her eyes pricked with tears she refused to let fall in front of him. Without another word, she turned and fled, the sound of his and his friends' laughter chasing her through the trees, a haunting echo of her own humiliation. She didn't stop running until she reached the safety of her small hut on the edge of the pack's territory, the place where she dried her herbs and mixed her salves. She sank to the floor, the dam finally breaking, and cried until she had no tears left. The pain of his rejection was a deep, aching hollow in her chest. He hadn't just rejected her affection. He had rejected her very essence, everything she was. He had called her core identity, her kindness, her healing, worthless. She stayed in her hut for the rest of the day and into the night, the darkness outside mirroring the sadness inside her. The Mosswood Pack was her home, but it had never felt like one. It was a place where she was tolerated but never celebrated, where her skills were used but never respected. Brock's words had just made it official. She didn't belong here. As the moon rose high, casting silvery beams through her window, a new feeling began to push aside the sadness, a steely sense of determination. If she was not wanted here, she would find a place where she was. She would leave. The thought was terrifying. Leaving the safety of a pack was dangerous for any wolf, especially one who wasn't a fighter. But the thought of staying, of facing Brock's smug face every day, of being forever known as the weakling he rejected, was far worse. Quietly she began to pack a small bag. She filled it with her most potent herbs, carefully wrapped bundles of dried roots, tiny jars of precious ointments, and a few pieces of bread. She moved like a ghost through her home, taking only what she could carry, what she truly needed. It was as she was tying her bag closed that she heard voices outside her window. It was the pack elders, 3 old wolves with graying fur and serious faces, walking past her hut on their nightly rounds. They were speaking in low, grave tones. "The Nightfall pack is falling apart without him," one was saying. "No one can challenge the rogue wolves moving into the Northern Territory. It's a disgrace." Sage froze, pressing herself against the wall to listen. "It is a tragedy," another voice, older and more weary, replied. "A mighty alpha brought so low. They call him the Broken King now, you know. Jett. His wound will not heal. It is a cursed injury from that silver-laced claw. It festers with a dark magic. Our strongest warriors would not survive it. His strength alone keeps him alive, but even that is fading. He pushes everyone away, lost in his pain. Without a miracle, the Nightfall pack will be no more by the next full moon." The elders moved on, their footsteps fading into the night, but their words hung in the air. A broken king. A mighty alpha named Jett. A wound that would not heal. Sage's heart, which had felt so broken and useless just hours before, gave a sudden, powerful thump. A wound that no one could heal. A king who was suffering alone. This was not a problem for a warrior's strength. This was a problem for a healer's hands. This was her language. A spark of purpose, fierce and bright, ignited within her. It was crazy, it was dangerous, but it was a path. She wouldn't just run away, she would run toward something. She would go to the mountains, to the territory of the feared Nightfall pack, and she would find this broken king. Maybe she would be turned away. Maybe he would be as cruel as Brock. But maybe, just maybe, her one gift, the very thing she was rejected for, could be the one thing that could save a king. Without allowing herself another moment to doubt, Sage slipped out of her hut and into the deep, dark woods. She did not look back at the mosswood pack. She moved silently, her light steps making no sound, her senses alert to every rustle of a leaf or hoot of an owl. The forest was vast and unknown, but for the first time in her life she felt a flicker of hope. She traveled through the rest of the night and all the next day, her muscles aching, her spirit weary but unbroken. She followed the stars north, toward the jagged, menacing peaks of the Nightfall territory. The air grew colder and thinner the higher she climbed. The friendly pine trees of her home were replaced by gnarled, ancient oaks and sharp, dark rocks. The feeling in the air changed too. It was tense, silent, and watchful. It wasn't long before she felt eyes on her. Then, without a sound, 2 massive wolves emerged from the shadows between the trees. Their fur was dark as midnight, and their eyes glowed with a fierce, amber light. They were bigger than any wolves from her pack, and they moved with a lethal, silent grace that spoke of constant vigilance and war. They circled her, low growls rumbling in their chests, their lips pulled back to reveal terrifyingly sharp fangs. Sage stood perfectly still, her heart hammering so loudly she was sure they could hear it. She forced her hands to remain at her sides, showing she held no weapon. "I mean no harm," she said, her voice trembling but clear. "I am a healer. I have come from the Mosswood pack. I heard about your alpha. I heard he is wounded. I think I can help him." The wolves stopped circling. One of them shifted in a blur of motion, and where the wolf had been, a tall, grim-faced man now stood, his arms crossed over his chest. He looked her over with deep suspicion, his nose wrinkling slightly at her foreign scent. "A Mosswood healer? You are far from home, little one. And you are alone? Why would you come here? Our alpha wants no visitors." Sage lifted her chin, trying to project a confidence she did not feel. "I came because I heard his wound is beyond normal healing. That is what I do. I heal what others cannot. Please, just take me to him. If he sends me away, I will go. But you have to let me try." The warrior studied her for a long, tense moment, his eyes searching for deceit. Finally, he gave a curt nod to his still-wolfed companion. "Very well. But know this, if this is a trick, it will be the last thing you ever do." He shifted back into his wolf form and nudged her forward with his head, guiding her deeper into the dark, mountainous territory. They led her to a large cave hidden behind a waterfall that flowed with icy, cold water. The entrance was shrouded in mist and shadow. Inside, the cave was expansive but felt more like a prison than a den. It was dark, cold, and smelled of loneliness and pain. And there, in the deepest recesses of the cave, lying on a bed of furs, was the Broken King. Jett was even larger than she had imagined, his body all hard muscle and power, even in his weakened state. But his face was pale and etched with deep lines of agony. His black hair was damp with sweat, and his eyes, a stunning stormy gray, were clouded with suffering. A terrible angry wound marred his side, pulsing with a sickly dark purple energy that seemed to suck the light from the air around it. He lifted his head as they entered, and a low, dangerous growl echoed through the cave. "I said no visitors," he snarled, his voice rough and strained with pain. "Get her out of here." The guards hesitated, but Sage took a small, hesitant step forward. She was terrified. This man was a king of beasts, a creature of immense power, and he was furious. But she also saw it, the profound pain, the exhaustion, the despair. She saw the brokenness behind the anger. "My name is Sage," she said, her voice barely a whisper but somehow cutting through the tension in the cave. "I am a healer. Please, let me see your wound. Just let me try to help." Jett glared at her, his gray eyes flashing. "No one can help," he roared, the effort making him cough in pain. "The best healers have tried. Your magic is useless here. Now leave me to my misery." He tried to sit up, to seem more threatening, but the movement was too much, and he collapsed back onto the furs with a groan of utter defeat. That groan did something to Sage. It melted her fear away, replacing it with a pure, unwavering need to heal. She ignored his command and walked slowly toward him, her movements calm and deliberate. She knelt beside his bed of furs, ignoring the warning growls from the guards at the entrance. She didn't reach for him right away. She simply looked at the wound, studying the dark magic that twisted and writhed within it. "This is not a wound for force," she said softly, more to herself than to him. "It is a wound for light." She closed her eyes for a brief moment, centering herself, finding that quiet, warm place inside her where her gift lived. Then she gently, so gently, placed her hands on either side of the cursed injury on his side. The moment her skin touched his, Jett flinched, expecting more pain. But instead of pain, a wave of soothing, golden warmth flowed from her palms into his torn flesh. It was a gentle, persistent light, not a harsh one. It did not attack the dark magic. It simply surrounded it, calming it, slowly dissolving its bitter edges. Jett let out a shuddering breath, his entire body going slack for the first time in months. The unbearable, grinding agony that had been his constant companion lessened. It didn't vanish, but it retreated, soothed by her incredible, gentle power. He opened his eyes, the anger and storm clouds in them clearing slightly, replaced by pure, unadulterated shock. He turned his head and looked at the young woman kneeling beside him. He truly saw her for the first time, not as an intruder but as a person. He saw her kind, focused face, the determination in her eyes, and the incredible power that radiated from her gentle hands. He saw not weakness but a strength he had never known existed. And in that moment, lying broken in his dark cave, the broken king felt the first flicker of something he thought had died with his injury: hope. The cave, once a tomb of shadows and despair, began to slowly transform. A single small fire now crackled near its entrance, pushing back the deepest of the darkness and casting a warm, dancing light that reflected in the still damp stone walls. This small beacon of warmth was Sage's doing. After that first miraculous touch that had eased the king's pain, a silent understanding had passed between them. Jett, though still gruff and guarded, had not ordered her away again. He had simply watched her, his stormy gray eyes following her every movement with a mixture of awe and deep, profound curiosity. Sage, for her part, worked with a quiet focus that belied the nervous flutter in her chest. She had unpacked her herbs, the air filling with the familiar, comforting scents of chamomile, crushed yarrow, and a particular sharp, clean mint she used for cleansing. Every day, like a new ritual, she would approach him. She would clean the angry wound with water she had infused with her herbs, her touch always feather-light and patient. Then she would place her hands upon it, and that same golden warmth would flow from her into him. Each session lasted a little longer. Each time, the dark, pulsing energy of the curse receded just a bit more, like a shadow shrinking under the steady rise of the sun. Jett's powerful body, which had been tensed in a permanent battle against agony, began to relax. Color returned to his face. The lines of pain smoothed away, revealing the strong, handsome features that had been hidden beneath his suffering. He began to sleep, a true restful sleep, the fitful unconsciousness of exhaustion. During the hours when she wasn't healing him, Sage would sit nearby, grinding herbs into pastes or sorting her dwindling supplies. The silence between them was no longer cold or empty. It was a comfortable, living thing. Jett was the first to break it. His voice, once a ragged growl, was now low and measured. "Why did you come here?" he asked one afternoon, his gaze fixed on her busy hands. Sage didn't look up, focusing on the mortar and pestle. "I heard a king was broken," she said simply. "And I was told I was broken too. It seemed like we might understand each other." He was quiet for a long moment. "Who told you that?" he finally asked, a subtle, protective edge entering his tone that made her glance up. She told him about Brock, about the rejection, about the words that had cut deeper than any claw. She spoke not with self-pity, but with a simple honesty that was more powerful than any anger. Jett listened, his expression growing darker with every word. "He is a fool," he stated, his voice a low rumble that vibrated through the cave. "Strength is not just about the power to break things. It is about the power to endure. The power to protect. The power to heal." He looked directly at her then, and his gaze was so intense it made her breath catch. "What you did, leaving everything you knew on the chance you could help a stranger. That is the bravest thing I have ever heard of. That is true strength." For Sage, his words were a balm more potent than any she could create. They sank into her soul, healing the old wound Brock's cruelty had left behind. As Jett grew stronger, he began to move around the cave, then just outside it. He started to resume his duties as Alpha, first by speaking with his Beta, a loyal warrior named Corvus, at the cave's entrance. Soon he was taking short walks, and he always insisted Sage come with him. He showed her his territory, not with the boastful pride of a conqueror, but with the quiet reverence of a man who truly loved his home. He showed her the hidden meadow where the pack's pups played, tumbling over each other like fuzzy, yipping balls of energy. He pointed out the tallest peak where the first ray of dawn touched their land. Sage saw how his people, the Nightfall Pack, looked at him. It was not just with respect, but with a deep, worried love. They had missed their king. They saw Sage not as an outsider, but as the one who was bringing him back to them. She found herself smiling more, laughing as she helped an elder with a sore joint or showed a young mother which herb was best for a teething pup. She was using her gift, and for the first time it was being celebrated. Jett watched her integrate into his pack, and something warm and undeniable began to grow in his chest, right where the curse had once festered. He loved watching the way the sunlight caught in her hair. He loved the focused little frown she got when she was concentrating on a mixture. He found himself seeking her out not for healing, but just to talk, to hear her quiet thoughts on the forest, on the stars, on what made a pack a true family. He realized her kindness wasn't a lack of strength, it was a different kind of power altogether, one that could calm a furious heart and unite a worried pack without a single snarl or raised claw. She made him want to be a better alpha, a wiser leader, a kinder man. This newfound peace was shattered one evening as the sun began to dip below the mountains. The sharp, warning howl of a border guard echoed through the territory, a sound that spoke of immediate threat. Jett was on his feet in an instant, his body thrumming with a protective energy that was now fueled by his returned strength. He, Sage, and Corvus moved to the edge of the territory where the rocky cliffs gave way to the forest below. And there they were. Brock and two other warriors from the Mosswood Pack, their postures aggressive, their scents smelling of arrogance and trouble. Brock's eyes scanned the group and landed on Sage, a nasty smirk spreading across his face. "There you are," he said, his voice dripping with condescension. "We've come to take the deserter back. Hiding behind a broken king and his pack, Sage? I'm not surprised. You always needed others to fight your battles." He then had the audacity to look Jett up and down. "So, the broken king is finally on his feet. Step aside. The weakling belongs with us." Before Sage could even form a response, a change came over Jett. He seemed to grow taller, his presence expanding to fill the entire clearing. The air crackled with his power. The gentle man who had walked with her through the meadows was gone, replaced entirely by the formidable Alpha, the king. His eyes glowed with a ferocious amber light, and a deep, terrifying growl erupted from his chest, a sound so primal it made the very trees seem to shudder. Brock and his companions instinctively took a step back, their bravado crumbling under the sheer force of Jett's dominance. "You will not speak her name." Jett's voice was not a shout, it was a low, deadly promise that carried further than any scream. "You will not look at her. You came into my territory to threaten what is mine." He took a step forward, and the Mosswood wolves retreated another step. "Sage is not weak. She is the strongest person I have ever known. She faced a broken monster when her own pack called her worthless, and she healed him with nothing but her courage and her heart. Her strength is worth more than the muscle of every warrior in your pathetic pack combined." He turned then, his gaze leaving Brock to find Sage. The fury in his eyes softened into something else, something fierce and loving and absolute. She is under my protection. She is the heart of my pack. She is my future. He looked back at Brock, his final words leaving no room for argument. She is mine. The word mine hung in the air, charged with a meaning every werewolf understood. It was the word used for a fated partner, for a mate, for the other half of one's soul. It was a claim that was deeper than any law, more powerful than any challenge. Brock's face went pale. He had come to retrieve someone he thought was worthless, only to find her cherished and claimed by a king. He had nothing left to say. With a final, fearful glance, he and his warriors turned and fled back into the forest, their tails literally between their legs. The moment they were gone, the terrifying alpha energy around Jett vanished. He turned fully to Sage, who was standing there, her heart pounding for a completely different reason now. The entire Nightfall pack, who had gathered silently to watch, looked on with held breath. Jett walked to her, closing the distance between them. He reached out and gently cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs stroking her cheeks. "He was wrong about everything," Jett whispered, his voice now tender, meant only for her. "You are not weak. You are not worthless. You are everything. You didn't just heal my body, Sage. You walked into my darkness and you brought the sun with you. You healed my heart. You made me remember what I was fighting for." He leaned down, his forehead resting against hers. "Stay with me. Be my partner. Rule by my side. Be my queen." Tears of pure joy welled in Sage's eyes, but she was smiling, a radiant, beautiful smile that lit up her whole face. She nodded, unable to find words that could possibly contain the happiness bursting inside her. "Yes," she finally breathed. "Always." Jett smiled too, a true, full smile that reached his stormy eyes and turned them into warm silver. And then he kissed her. It was not a simple kiss. It was a promise. It was warm and sure and filled with a love that was both gentle and passionate, a kiss that spoke of a future built on a foundation of mutual respect and deep, unshakable devotion. It was a kiss that felt like coming home. The pack erupted into cheers and joyful howls that echoed through the mountains, a celebration for their returned king and their new kind-hearted queen. Sage, the girl who had been rejected for her gentleness, was now embraced for it, lifted up by it, loved because of it. She and Jett ruled the Nightfall pack together for many, many years, their love story becoming a legend whispered to every new generation of pups. They proved that a pack needed both the strength of the claw and the strength of the heart to truly thrive. They were two halves of a whole, the warrior and the healer, the king and his queen, and their love made their pack the strongest in all the lands. If you followed the journey of Sage and Jett from heartbreak to healing and found their story captivating, then you won't want to miss what happens next in this world of powerful alphas and fierce love. Subscribe to the channel to be the first to know when new tales of romance and adventure unfold. Your support helps us bring more of these stories to life. Until next time.